Number 1. Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales. A teenager made a joke for views, and he paid for it with 15 bullets. It is a terrifying reality of the digital age that we often believe the screen in front of us is a shield. We think the words we type or the videos we post exist in a separate universe, far removed from physical consequences. For a 17-year-old boy named Juan Luis Lagunas Rosales, that illusion of digital safety would become a brutal, deadly trap. Juan Luis was better known to his millions of fans online as El Pirata de Culiacán. He was just a kid, really, a boy who had grown up with very little, suddenly thrust into the blinding spotlight of internet fame. His brand was built on excess. He filmed himself living a fast, reckless life, drinking heavily, partying with older men, and portraying an image of untouchable bravado. He was desperate for attention, desperate to belong in a world that glorified the very violence that surrounded him in Mexico. But before we delve deeper into this tragic descent, if you find yourself drawn to the psychological depths of these dark true crime stories, please make sure to subscribe so you never miss a case. Juan Luis was riding high on the dopamine rush of millions of views. He felt like he was on top of the world. Every like, every share, every comment only fueled his belief that he was invincible. He was a court jester in a kingdom ruled by ruthless warlords, entertaining the masses without realizing the true danger of the stage he was performing on. He thought he was playing a game. He thought the rules of the streets did not apply to a viral sensation. But in the shadowy valleys of Jalisco, popularity does not buy you protection. It only makes you a more visible target. The boy was walking on a tightrope over a pit of vipers, completely blind to the venomous predators watching his every move. He was 17, a child playing an adult's lethal game, intoxicated by a fame that would soon demand the ultimate, bloody price.
The fatal mistake happened in the hazy, drunken hours of a night in 2017. The camera was rolling, as it always was for Juan Luis. He was heavily intoxicated, slurring his words, emboldened by the alcohol and the cheering of the people around him. In a moment of pure, reckless arrogance, he decided to target the most dangerous man in the Western Hemisphere. He looked directly into the lens and verbally insulted Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, the phantom warlord known to the world as El Mencho. The exact phrase was deeply vulgar, a direct challenge to the supreme leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. He essentially told the world that El Mencho could not touch him. It was a catastrophic error in judgment. To understand the gravity of this mistake, you have to understand who he was insulting. El Mencho is not a man who trades insults on the internet. He is a ghost who commands a private army. He is a man who orders the executions of entire families and shoots down military helicopters just to send a message. In the criminal underworld of Mexico, respect is the only currency that matters, and disrespect is punished with absolute, terrifying violence. The video was uploaded. It went viral almost instantly. Millions of people watched the 17-year-old sign his own death warrant. Can you imagine the cold dread that must have washed over him the next morning, when the alcohol faded and the reality of his words set in? Did he know he was a dead man walking? He had publicly humiliated a billionaire cartel boss whose reach extended into every corner of the country. There was no apology that could fix it. There was no place he could hide. The internet laughed, shared the clip, and moved on to the next trend, completely detached from the very real ticking clock that had just started counting down the final days of the boy's life. He was a ghost, waiting for the Reaper to collect.
The Reaper arrived in December of 2017. It was supposed to be just another night out for the internet star. Juan Luis was at a busy, lively bar in the Tlaquepaque area of Jalisco. Music was playing, drinks were pouring, and the teenager was likely trying to drown out the anxiety of the past few weeks, hoping the cartel had simply ignored his drunken rant. But the Jalisco New Generation Cartel never ignores an insult. The atmosphere inside the bar shattered in an instant. Heavily armed hitmen stormed through the doors. They did not bother to hide their faces. They moved with the cold, calculated precision of men who kill for a living. The music stopped abruptly. The patrons froze in sheer terror as the gunmen swept the room, their eyes searching for one specific target. It did not take them long to identify the boy. They cornered Juan Luis. There was no conversation, no chance to beg for mercy, no time to apologize for a viral joke gone wrong. The hitmen opened fire. They shot the 17-year-old more than 15 times. The sheer volume of gunfire was not just meant to kill him, it was meant to completely obliterate him. It was a gruesome, overkill execution designed to send a chilling message to the entire country. No one is untouchable. Juan Luis died instantly on the blood-soaked floor of the bar, his brief, chaotic life extinguished in a hail of bullets. The gunmen calmly walked out, vanishing into the night as easily as they had arrived. The boy who lived for the internet died in a very real, very dark reality. His tragedy is a haunting reminder of the absolute ruthlessness of El Mencho's empire. But while a teenager's foolish mistake might seem like an easy target, the cartel's thirst for blood soon proved that not even the highest corridors of political power could protect a man from a bullet in the dark.
Number 2. Aristóteles Sandoval. Even the absolute pinnacle of state power, the very men elected to govern the land, are nothing but fragile targets when the cartel decides their time is up. Aristóteles Sandoval knew the dangers of a state better than anyone. He had served as the governor of Jalisco, a region known for its breathtaking beauty, its vibrant culture, and its terrifying reality as the primary stronghold of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. To govern Jalisco is to walk a daily, invisible tightrope over a canyon of immense violence. Sandoval was a man accustomed to the heavy weight of authority. He moved through the world surrounded by layers of security, armored vehicles, and highly trained bodyguards whose sole purpose was to keep him breathing. He had navigated the treacherous political waters of a state effectively co-ruled by El Mencho and survived his term. One might assume that stepping down from such a high-profile position would bring a sense of relief, a quiet retreat into the safety of civilian life. But in the relentless memory of the underworld, past titles offer no amnesty. It was December of 2020, a time usually reserved for holiday celebrations and relaxing getaways. Sandoval decided to take a vacation in the stunning coastal city of Puerto Vallarta, a world-famous tourist hub shimmering with luxury resorts and upscale nightlife. He likely felt a profound sense of security surrounded by affluent tourists and the comforting presence of his personal security detail. Puerto Vallarta was a playground for the rich, a place where the brutal realities of the cartel wars seemed like a distant nightmare. He was out with friends at an exclusive restaurant called Distrito 5. The drinks were flowing, and the heavy burden of his former political life was miles away. He was relaxed. He was completely unaware that the invisible crosshairs of the most dangerous syndicate on the planet were already resting squarely on his back. How could a man so heavily guarded, a man so deeply entrenched in the political elite, fail to sense the approaching storm? The cartel does not care about your past titles or your armored cars. They only care about the message your death will send.
The night wore on, stretching into the early hours of December 18th. The atmosphere inside the upscale restaurant was electric with laughter and the clinking of expensive glasses. At approximately 1:15 in the morning, Aristóteles Sandoval excused himself from his table of friends. It was a completely mundane, everyday action. He stood up and made his way toward the restroom. In a public space, surrounded by people and his loyal security detail, this short walk should have been the safest journey in the world. But the hitmen of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel are masters of exploiting the briefest moments of human vulnerability. When a high-value target is surrounded by guards, you do not attack the convoy, you wait for the 1 second they are truly alone. As Sandoval entered the isolation of the bathroom, he was completely defenseless. The loud music and the chatter of the restaurant masked the quiet, deliberate footsteps of the killer trailing closely behind him. A highly trained assassin had slipped into the restaurant, blending seamlessly into the wealthy crowd, waiting patiently for this exact solitary moment. What goes through a person's mind in those final, terrible seconds? Did Sandoval hear the door close behind him? Did he catch a fleeting, terrifying glimpse of his executioner in the reflection of the mirror? There was no time to shout for his guards. There was no time to negotiate. The assassin raised his weapon and fired directly into the former governor from behind. The deafening crack of the gunshot echoed violently off the tiled walls, instantly shattering the festive illusion of Puerto Vallarta.
The man who once commanded the police forces of the entire state collapsed onto the cold floor, bleeding out in a public restroom. It was a deeply humiliating, calculated execution. The cartel did not just want to murder him, they wanted to demonstrate that they could reach anyone, anywhere, regardless of their status or the men paid to protect them. But the bloodshed in that upscale tourist hub was far from over.
The sudden, violent sound of the gunshot ripped through the restaurant, replacing the music with pure, unadulterated panic. Sandoval's bodyguards instantly reacted, drawing their weapons and sprinting toward the restroom to save the man they were sworn to protect. They were highly trained professionals, ready to lay down their lives, but they were walking into a meticulously planned military operation. The assassin inside the bathroom was not acting alone. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel had locked down the entire perimeter. As the former governor's security detail rushed the restroom, a heavily armed strike team waiting right outside the restaurant unleashed a massive, overwhelming barrage of gunfire. They transformed the wealthy tourist strip into an active war zone in the blink of an eye. The deafening roar of automatic weapons forced the bodyguards into a desperate, chaotic firefight. Bullets shattered glass, tore through the upscale facade, and sent terrified tourists diving under tables for their lives. The covering fire was flawlessly executed, creating a wall of lead that pinned the security detail down just long enough. Under the cover of this absolute chaos, the hitman who pulled the trigger slipped away into the warm coastal night, vanishing like a ghost. Aristóteles Sandoval was rushed to a local hospital, but the damage was catastrophic. The former governor of Jalisco was pronounced dead, sending a massive shockwave of terror throughout the entire Mexican government. The message El Mencho delivered that night was crystal clear and completely terrifying. If the cartel can execute a heavily guarded former governor in the bathroom of a luxury resort, then absolutely no one in the country is safe from their reach. The state government was paralyzed by the sheer audacity of the hit. But if assassinating a powerful politician displayed their dominance, their next target would cross a line so dark it would shatter the foundation of the law, proving those who sit on the highest benches of justice are not immune to the slaughter of their own innocent families.
Number 3. Uriel Villegas Ortiz. The gavel of a federal judge is supposed to be the ultimate symbol of untouchable authority, but when it strikes against the bloodline of a warlord, it becomes a death sentence for the man holding it. Uriel Villegas Ortiz was a man who believed in the heavy weight of the law. He was a federal judge in Mexico, a position that requires a spine of absolute steel. He did not preside over petty thefts or local neighborhood disputes. His courtroom was the front line of a terrifying war. He handled the most dangerous, high-stakes organized crime cases in the country, looking directly into the eyes of men who murdered for a living. To be a judge of this magnitude in a nation suffocated by cartels is to live with a perpetual, invisible target painted on your back. Yet he went to work every single day, draped in the black robes of justice, trying to hold together a system that was constantly crumbling under the crushing weight of billion-dollar corruption. He was a husband to a loving wife, Veronica Barajas, and a dedicated father to 2 young daughters. They were his sanctuary, the quiet, innocent refuge he returned to after spending his days deciphering the darkest, most brutal acts of human depravity. He likely believed that the sanctity of his office, the sheer audacity of attacking a federal judge, would create an invisible, impenetrable barrier around his home in the city of Colima. He believed the cartels, despite their monstrous reputations, had lines they would not cross. But the Jalisco New Generation Cartel does not recognize the authority of the courtroom, and they certainly do not respect the sanctity of a family home. They operate on a chilling doctrine of absolute disproportionate retaliation, and Judge Villegas was about to make a ruling that would cross the most dangerous, unforgivable line in the criminal underworld. He was going to touch the supreme leader's bloodline. Do you think a man of the law ever truly sleeps peacefully when he knows his signature can start a war?
The fatal signature was inked on a prison transfer order. Judge Villegas was presented with a highly sensitive, incredibly dangerous directive regarding a prisoner named Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez. To the world, he was known as El Menchito. He was the son of the Supreme Phantom, the direct heir to El Mencho's billion-dollar throne.
El Menchito was already behind bars, but the judge ordered his transfer to a different, maximum security federal prison, a move designed to sever his communication and completely weaken the cartel's grip. It was a bold, uncompromising application of the law, but to El Mencho, it was an unforgivable act of war. You can seize their drugs, you can freeze their bank accounts, but you never, ever lay a hand on the family. The retaliation was not a matter of if, but when, and it was going to be biblical. On the morning of June 16, 2020, the illusion of safety around the judge's home in Colima completely evaporated. It was a Tuesday, the sun was up, the neighborhood was quiet, and the Villegas family was inside their house, likely going about their normal morning routine. The two young daughters were present, completely unaware that monsters were gathering right outside their front door. Cartel hitmen do not operate in the shadows when they want to send a message to the state. They want the world to see the blood. Heavily armed assassins descended upon the residence. They did not care about the neighbors, they did not care about the local police, and they certainly did not care about the innocent children playing inside. They breached the home with terrifying speed and absolute lethal intent. Can you imagine the sheer, suffocating terror of sitting in your living room only to have the front door kicked in by heavily armed executioners who know your name? The judge's sanctuary was instantly violated, transformed from a place of love and laughter into a cold, brutal slaughterhouse. The hitmen were not there to intimidate, they were there to eradicate.
The assassins moved through the house with the cold, calculated efficiency of an apex predator. They found federal judge Uriel Villegas Ortiz and his wife, Veronica. There was no grand speech, no list of demands, and absolutely no mercy. In the very place where they should have been the safest, the hitmen opened fire. They executed the judge in cold blood, punishing the man of the law for daring to exercise his legal authority against the syndicate. But the sheer, unadulterated evil of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel was fully revealed in their very next action. They turned their weapons directly on Veronica. She was not a judge. She had not signed any prison transfer orders. She was simply a loving mother, a devoted wife, an innocent woman caught in the catastrophic crossfire of a billionaire warlord's furious vendetta. They murdered her right alongside her husband. Their two little girls were in the house, forced to endure a nightmare that would permanently shatter their entire world, completely orphaned in a matter of violently deafening seconds. The hitmen then casually walked out, leaving the broken remains of a family bleeding on the floor. The physical act of the murder was over, but the psychological shockwave was just beginning to detonate across the country. By slaughtering a high-ranking federal judge and his innocent wife in their own home, El Mencho sent a paralyzing, horrific message to every single lawyer, police officer, and politician in Mexico. He proved that the judicial gavel is entirely powerless against the cartel's gun. The justice system was brought to its knees, terrified by the stark realization that trying to cage the cartel's bloodline would result in the complete, ruthless extermination of their own. It was a brutal, heartbreaking demonstration of absolute, unchecked power. But if the cartel was willing to invade a quiet family home to execute a judge, their next display of dominance would require a small army, completely transforming the busy upscale streets of the nation's capital into a terrifying, military-grade war zone just to hunt down a single police chief.
Number 4. Omar García Harfuch. The busy, upscale streets of the nation's capital did indeed transform into a terrifying military-grade war zone, proving that for the cartel, there is no such thing as a safe haven. Mexico City is a sprawling, vibrant metropolis, a place where millions of people go about their daily lives, trusting in the sheer scale of the city to provide a buffer against the violence that plagues the provinces. Lomas de Chapultepec is the crown jewel of this security. It is an ultra-exclusive, deeply affluent neighborhood lined with sprawling mansions, embassies, and heavy private security. It is the last place on earth you would expect a heavily armed militia to stage an ambush. But Omar García Harfuch was not dealing with a typical street gang. He was the top public security secretary for Mexico City, a man whose entire career was dedicated to dismantling the cartels and pushing back against the encroaching darkness. He was a formidable obstacle for El Mencho, a police chief who refused to be intimidated by the Phantom's legendary brutality. Harfuch knew the risks of his position better than anyone. He traveled in heavily armored vehicles, flanked by highly trained bodyguards who were ready to sacrifice everything to keep him alive. On the early morning of June 26, 2020, the sun was just beginning to rise over the capital. It was approximately 6:30 in the morning, a time when the wealthy residents of Lomas de Chapultepec were still asleep or quietly sipping their first cup of coffee. The air was crisp and still. Harfuch's convoy navigated the familiar, elegant streets, a routine commute that should have been entirely unremarkable. But the cartel had meticulously studied his movements. They did not send a lone assassin into the shadows. They sent a small army to the front door of the country's elite. How does a massive hit squad infiltrate the most secure neighborhood in the entire country without triggering a single alarm? It requires an intelligence network that rivals the government itself, a chilling reminder of the Phantom's vast, terrifying reach.
The sheer scale of the violence that erupted on that quiet avenue is almost impossible to comprehend. Without warning, a massive truck abruptly blocked the path of the police chief's armored vehicle, forcing the convoy to a violent halt. Before Harfuch's security detail could even radio for backup, all hell broke loose. 28 heavily armed hitmen poured out of the surrounding vehicles and surrounding cover. They were not carrying standard pistols or hunting rifles. They were wielding military-grade weaponry designed for absolute catastrophic destruction. The deafening roar of Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifles tore through the morning silence. These are weapons engineered to pierce light armor and disable military hardware, and they were being fired relentlessly into the streets of a residential neighborhood. The hitmen unleashed hundreds of armor-piercing rounds, shredding the metal of the police chief's vehicle as if it were made of paper. They hurled fragmentation grenades, turning the pristine avenue into a nightmare of smoke, fire, and flying shrapnel. Inside the violently shaking vehicle, Omar García Harfuch was trapped in a relentless storm of lead. The armor plating was failing under the overwhelming, sustained barrage. Can you fathom the sheer, suffocating panic of being trapped inside a steel box while 28 executioners try to rip it apart with heavy artillery? His bodyguards, acting with incredible, selfless heroism, desperately tried to shield him and return fire, but they were hopelessly outgunned by the cartel's highly trained small army. They were not just trying to assassinate a single man. They were trying to send a terrifying message to the entire nation. The relentless sound of the assault echoed for miles, vibrating through the windows of the sprawling mansions and waking the terrified residents of the capital to the chilling reality that the war had finally arrived on their doorsteps. The Jalisco New Generation Cartel was proving a horrific point. They were demonstrating that they possessed the tactical capability and the sheer, unadulterated audacity to lay siege to the very heart of the Mexican government. The crossfire was completely indiscriminate, an ocean of bullets that showed absolutely no mercy to anyone caught in its devastating path.
When the deafening roar of the heavy artillery finally ceased and the thick, suffocating smoke began to clear from the shattered, blood-stained avenue, the true, heartbreaking cost of the cartel's arrogance was revealed. The armored vehicle was a mangled, smoking ruin, riddled with hundreds of massive bullet holes. Tragically, 2 of the police chief's loyal, brave bodyguards lost their lives in the brutal ambush, sacrificing their own futures to buy their commander a few extra seconds of life. But the cruelty of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel does not stop at men carrying badges. An innocent woman, simply driving past the area on her way to work to start her day, was caught in the devastating crossfire. She was instantly killed, her beautiful life completely extinguished in a matter of seconds, simply for being on the wrong street at the wrong time. Yet, miraculously, despite the fragmentation grenades and the 50 caliber sniper rounds, Omar García Harfuch was still breathing. He had been shot 3 times during the catastrophic assault, bleeding heavily and in immense pain, but he survived the assassination attempt. He was rushed to a secure medical facility, a bruised but unbroken symbol of resistance against the encroaching syndicate. Even from his hospital bed, bleeding and recovering from emergency surgery, Harfuch refused to be intimidated or silenced. That very same day, he released a public message on social media, directly and courageously pointing the finger at El Mencho and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, refusing to let them hide in the shadows of their own violence. He survived a 28-man military strike in the heart of the capital, exposing the absolute ruthlessness of a billionaire warlord who will destroy anything in his path. But if transforming the nation's capital into a bloody, smoking war zone felt like the absolute peak of the cartel's terrifying audacity, their thirst for power was about to reach even higher, turning their heavy artillery toward the sky to declare a fiery, catastrophic war against the military itself.
Number 5. The Mexican military and elite security forces. Turning heavy artillery toward the sky to declare a fiery, catastrophic war against the military itself is an act of pure madness. But for the Phantom of Jalisco, it was simply a demonstration of absolute power. In the bloody history of the drug trade, there has always been an unspoken rule of engagement. Cartels fight each other for territory, and they assassinate local police who stand in their way. But when the federal government sends in elite military forces, cartels usually scatter. They hide in the deep mountains, bribe officials to look the other way, or simply vanish into the shadows until the heat dies down. You do not go to war with a sovereign nation's armed forces. But Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes did not play by the old rules. He built an empire that rivaled the state, equipping his men not just with rifles, but with military-grade tactical gear, armored assault vehicles, and heavy artillery. The spring of 2015 marked a terrifying, irreversible escalation in this bloody conflict. In April, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel orchestrated a massive, highly coordinated ambush on a state security convoy traveling down a rural highway. It was a calculated slaughter. They executed 15 police officers in a single, devastating attack, leaving the burning, bullet-riddled wreckage of vehicles scattered across the blood-stained asphalt. The government suddenly realized they were no longer fighting a mere criminal syndicate. They were fighting a heavily armed, well-funded insurgency. The state had to respond with overwhelming force. They launched Operation Jalisco, a massive military offensive designed to hunt down the Phantom and dismantle his billion-dollar empire. In May, elite troops boarded helicopters, preparing to descend upon the cartel's stronghold. They believed their control of the sky would give them the ultimate tactical advantage. They believed they were hunting a man. But how do you arrest a warlord who owns rocket launchers and possesses the sheer audacity to look up at the sky and decide to shoot the government down?
The 1st of May 2015 began as a day of reckoning, a highly coordinated military strike designed to finally cage the most dangerous man on Earth. High above the rugged, sun-baked terrain of Jalisco, a Cougar helicopter carrying elite military personnel and federal police cut through the morning air. The heavily armed soldiers inside were some of the absolute best of the best, fully prepared and trained to bravely raid the syndicate's hostile territory. They were tracking a heavily armed cartel convoy moving on the ground below, believing they had finally cornered the elusive kingpin or his highest-ranking lieutenants. From their vantage point in the sky, the military held the ultimate high ground. In any normal tactical scenario, a convoy facing a heavily armed military gunship would instantly surrender or scatter in absolute panic. But the men guarding El Mencho were not normal street thugs. They were a brainwashed, hyper-violent private army, willing to die to protect their supreme leader. Instead of fleeing in terror, the heavily armored cartel convoy abruptly stopped in the dirt. The sicarios poured out of their vehicles, but they did not run for cover. They stood their ground, raising their weapons toward the roaring metal beast hovering in the sky. Among the heavy machine guns, one of the cartel operatives hoisted a Soviet-designed rocket-propelled grenade launcher onto his shoulder. Can you imagine the sheer, suffocating disbelief of the military pilots as they looked down and realized the cartel was aiming heavy anti-tank artillery directly at their cockpit? There was no time to perform an evasive maneuver or escape to blast radius. Without a second of hesitation, the cartel operative pulled the heavy metal trigger. The rocket-propelled grenade tore through the air, leaving a thick trail of white smoke as it traveled at terrifying speed. The impact was absolutely catastrophic. The rocket slammed directly into the tail rotor of the massive aircraft, detonating with a deafening, fiery explosion that instantly crippled the machine. The helicopter violently spun out of control,
a flaming, dying Leviathan plunging toward the unforgiving earth below.
The crippled helicopter plummeted from the sky, a terrifying mass of burning metal and shattered glass, before slamming violently into the rugged Jalisco terrain. The sheer force of the impact and the subsequent inferno created a scene of absolute, heartbreaking devastation. In a matter of seconds, the cartel had successfully shot down a state-of-the-art military aircraft. At least 9 brave soldiers and federal agents lost their lives in the catastrophic crash, their bodies burning in the wreckage, while the cartel convoy used the chaotic, blinding smoke to escape deeper into the mountains. The Phantom of Jalisco had literally swatted the federal government out of the sky. The psychological shockwave of this brazen attack paralyzed the nation. The government was forced to confront a terrifying new reality. El Mencho had crossed a line that even the most notorious drug lords of the past had feared to approach. He proved that his private army was not just capable of dominating the streets, but possessed the heavy artillery and the sheer, unadulterated ruthlessness to wage a direct conventional war against the sovereign state. The burning wreckage of the military helicopter became a dark, terrifying monument to his absolute power. It was a profound declaration that no one, not viral internet stars, not state governors, not federal judges, and not even the elite military forces of the nation, could stand in his way without paying the ultimate bloody price. The lives destroyed by the cartel form a seemingly endless, tragic hit list, a trail of broken families and burning cities left in the wake of a billionaire warlord's insatiable thirst for dominance. The Phantom may have eventually succumbed to his own failing body in the dark mountains, but the terrifying syndicate he built continues to poison the earth. As the dust settles on his unmarked grave and his monstrous lieutenants violently claim his empty throne, we are left to wonder just how much more innocent blood will be spilled before the ghost of El Mencho is finally laid to rest.